coming classes will be all based on convention questions. Okay. So enough nagging around like, ma'am, punctuations, ma'am, punctuations, ma'am, punctuations. Okay. Stop saying that. We'll get to the punctuation. So today we're working on sentence fragments and clauses, because without knowing these bases, the basic idea, you're just beating around the bush. You're not coming to the point. So let's come to the point. And yes, as I was mentioning, you will have boundary and form sentence structures, sense type of questions, and the phrase which choice completes 15th question onwards, you have this particular standard English convention questions. All you're tested is your editing skills and proofreading skills. Okay. So you have to master this to show that you're a great editor and you know the basic rules or the functionalities of all the rules, 13, 18 rules associated with punctuations, grammar rules, and so on. Okay, within this, we will be dealing the boundary questions, will work on these aspects, sentence formulations, utilizing how to use it, like join the sentence, separate the sentence. Then you have something called as essential and non-essential clauses. Then you have punctuations, modifiers, and so on. So these are the concepts which are included in this particular boundary category. Okay. So yeah, and also within this sentence formation, we will be working on fragments, pause, and also run-ons and comma splices. Quite, they are pretty they are like traps. So you also have to look for these kind of traps, run-ons and comma splices. All right, and yeah. Today we are working on this boundary questions. First thing first, you need to understand the sentence structure. So let's identify what are the basic things that comes under this boundary questions. Okay. Too much of introduction. Now, sentence, as per the definition is concerned, a sentence is a group of words that contain three things. At any cost, your sentence, I mean, a complete, meaningful sentence, an independent sentence should have a subject, should have a verb, and a complete thought. Like, it should not be half done, okay? Even ChatGPT won't accept. It says something is missing. Acha. That clearly means you didn't put your sentence properly, right? So this is the basic aspect of a sentence. Any doubt in this? We are going absolutely fundamental. Okay, then we will move to the advanced part. Okay, now what is a sentence fragment? Now that you understood this is sentence, which has to have a subject, right? And a verb that is conjugated to the subject. Let's the subject is he, she, it. You have to have a subject that is associated with it, right? An antecedent that connects to the noun part. And you should also have anything adjective also. Anything that is corresponding to the subject, you have to have a verb forms, right? And if it is in past, the discussion is about the past, then it will have a conjugated verb of past tense. Like tense forms also, like that means subject verb agreement must be there. And a complete thought, when you have subject verb agreement, naturally it is a complete thought. Just opposite to that is sentence fragments, which is nothing but group of words again. But here is what you have to understand. It lacks one or more of these things. Which are those three things? It will have a fragment. It will have a sentence, but somewhere it is missing a subject. Without subject, how do you know who is the doer? Will you understand who is a doer? Yes. How do I know who is doing what? So subject is missing in the scene, and therefore that becomes a fragment. What about it is missing a verb? Subject to have, but we have subject, but verb is missing. Who is doing that? What is the action done by the subject is missing. And finally, the third part, it fails to complete the thought it starts. So it's just a piece of words string together, but either they're missing a subject or a verb, and therefore you end up like chalo chalo. This is like half done, half baked. So it's the thought is not complete. Am I clear with the sentence fragments? Chalo, put something in the chat box. Everyone. Achha, do I need to name you guys? Name by name? Achha, okay. You need that attention, huh? Yes, Chaitra. Good, Veda. Good. Absolutely. Chalo. Good. Now let's talk about each type. Okay. What will happen if I have a missing, if subject is missing, then how do I identify this that my subject, that my so-called given statement is missing out with the subject. Okay. So as you can read out, some fragments are missing subject. Often the subject appears nearby, perhaps in the preceding sentence. However, each sentence must have a subject of its own, right? So let's say there is one sentence, complete sentence, right? But in the next sentence, you will not find its subject. It can be missing of pronouns. It can be missing of the noun forms. So how do you know who is doing what? Okay. Phrases which include words ending ing often appears as fragment. Please keep this in mind. A very important tip that you have to follow. What are the words that end with ing? You have what? Words with ing. What did I tell you? What are the traps? Nouns with, there are different varieties of nouns, right? One is gerund phrases. Okay. So gerund phrases, usually they have verb plus ing forms. They are considered as fragments. So any fragment that has, or any statement that has a gerund, you can consider it as fragments. Most commonly seen are with the ing forms. Okay. So this is how you identify whether that particular statement, whether the statement is ing, I mean, it's a phrase, gerund or not. Okay. Now let me give you an example for more clarity. There you go. So a fragment was running late that day. This is a good example for who is running. Who's running? Is it Manohar running? Do I know about this? Therefore, this is qualified for being called as a fragment, officially qualified as a fragment. Okay. Now, how will we better this? It's a big question. How will we better this? We have to start plugging in subject so that we can create a complete sentence. Okay. Right. What's the next point? The next thing that is missing is, yeah, this was what I was talking about. Biking and swimming after work on Thursdays. Who is biking here? Where is this person? All of a sudden, somebody is doing biking and swimming after work on Thursdays, but I'm clueless. Who is that? Who is this mysterious guy on Thursdays, especially after work, is biking and swimming? Phew, so much of calorie burns. Okay. So this basically qualifies as a, yes, a fragment. Am I clear? Three aspects, three criterias will qualify that particular statement as a complete sentence or as a fragment. Babu, did you get it? Put that in the chat box. I'll keep forwarding with all this discussion, but I want it to be very clear, very basic. Next, again, if you look to register, this is again a example for subject missing. To register for class before the deadline. Who is registering to whom? Too much confusion, right? I'm getting frustrated already. So if you do this, let's imagine you're writing this in your essay. So that's exactly what we miss out in IELTS. Most of the IELTS students do all these mistakes. They just throw out the fragments and they end up scoring 5.5s because the exam is clueless. Who are they talking about? Okay, it's very important aspect. So next, the second aspect, missing on verbs. Some fragments are fragments. Okay, wow, good. And because they're missing a verb or essential part of the verb. So you will have a subject, you have rest of the sentence, but the action is missing. So any phrase, no matter how long, is a fragment if verb is missing. Very important point. Let's move on with the example. So what is the example saying? The birch trees with their rattling yellow leaves. Okay. So what is missing over here? Why is this exactly qualified as a fragment? Any reason? What about the trees? So here your verb is missing. Okay. So how do we better this? By adding a verb, make this fragment complete. Your job is to add something. What you have to identify what's missing and better that. You have to improvise it. That's the way you can find your answers in your actual test. Okay, you have to look out for these things. Does it have a subject? Nah. Does it have a verb? So you have to question yourself and then look out for the options. Okay, so this is how we better the fragment and make it into a complete sentence. The verse trees with their rattling yellow leaves swayed in the wind. So what happened afterwards with the trees? Okay, they were rattling yellow leaves. Then what? Okay, what was the next action which was missing? So we added here. This addition will be done if given in the options. Okay. All right. The third criteria. Right. This is one more aspect. Words ending in ing, for example, must include helpers. Very, very important. Test it. We have a question on this. You have to keep this in mind. Okay. You have to include, if words are ending with ing, look out for is, are, was, were, or will be, has been. This kind of real verbs should be added. Ing is a real verb. Is ing real verb? Verb plus ing, is it a real verb? Yes. So some verbs require helpers in order to complete the, in order to give a complete sentence. Okay. So for helping that, you need to include these things. Look out for the options which has, first look if the sentence or the statement has ing form. In that scenario, you are looking at the options which starts with is, are, was, were, will be, because these are the real verbs. Ing is not a real verb, right? It is a gerund form. Keep that in mind. Gerund always comes as a distractor. It's a trap. Here you go. So Carolyn studying her psychology tonight at Moxie's downtown. I want one of you to put that in the chat box, not one of you. Put your answers. How can we better this fragment? There's some strangeness, right? When you hear it also, you're not feeling correct. Carolyn studying her psychology tonight at Moxie's downtown. I don't find this very good. Anish K, perfect. Yes, you got it. So you got that covered? Absolutely. So your answer is A, studying. Carolyn studying her psychology tonight at tonight. Babu, tonight. It's not yet happened. So, good. See, is used when this is a, see, that's what I said. Look for the clues. Don't just, yeah, grammatically you're correct. If I not seen this tonight part, but it is tonight. Something has not happened yet. So we will be using will be. Clear? Will be studying. Yes, Anvita. Correct. So let's see if your answer and my answer are correct. Hooray. Yes, we both sync with our answers. Very good. Not sync. SYNC. Okay. Not SINK, sync. All right. So let me clear this off. Next. So with the verb, I think every doubt has been cleared. If a subject is missing, if a verb is missing, if words ending with ing, get alert, look for helping verbs, real verbs in the options. Now the third criteria, what is the third criteria? Unfinished thoughts. A very common type of fragment is the unfinished thought fragment. Okay. While other kinds of fragments require you to add something. So far, we were been adding something, right? Now let's see a subject or a verb or both. You can often fix unfinished thought fragments simply by joining to a preceding or following sentence. Okay. So hint words, usually this unfinished thoughts come with incomplete thought actually. Why is it incomplete? Because you will have a sentence that starts with since, while, when, unless, although. Basically, they are called dependent clauses. Dependent clauses basically can't stand by themselves. They need something to lean on. And that leaning will be helped by joining these so-called incomplete thoughts to the complete thought. Okay, let's say the previous sentence is a complete thought. So you will not end up with a full stop. And then if a new sentence starts with since da da da, then you have to remove that period between the two sentences and you have to continue writing it. For that, we cannot just continue writing. That's called a commas. Then it becomes a run-on sentence. You can't mash two things together, that two sentences like that. We need a punctuation over there. Okay. Now look at this fragment. Because tuition increased again this semester. Does it make any sense? The thought, it's not giving me a complete thought, right? And whom to blame? Who is the one to be blamed here? What was the reason? What is the reason why I feel like, oh, something is not complete? Why do you think? Yes, it has subject, right? What's the subject? Tuition. What's the verb? Increased. However, this is an unfinished thought. Then what should we do? And why is it incomplete thought? Because it starts with such kind of it's called a subordinate conjunction. Subordinate conjunctions. Okay, these are very common, and this is what you have to look out in any sentence. Okay, now to make it a complete thought, how do we better this? What does the rule say? You have to either join them to a preceding or following sentence. Since we do not have the previous sentence, let me give it to you guys. Okay, so always the hint words are because, since, while, when. This is often tested to check whether you understand what's a sentence and a fragment. You're not directly asked on it, but it is part of the sentence corrections. Okay. If you find a fragment of this kind, see if the sentence before or the sentence after it would complete. So look out for this kind of, if you find because or since on any sentence that starts with this kind of conjunctions or some of the fanboys or some of subordinate conjunctions. So it is understandable. You have to either make it as part of that so-called previous sentence or the continuation of the sentence. Okay. Now, how do we do it? So I have added, maybe the previous sentence was about co must take fewer units. So this must be the previous sentence. So accordingly, because tuition increased again this semester, either I can write like this by, you know, fixing this thought with joining to the previous sentence, or I can go like, maybe there's another sentence, next continuation. I can open this up and then continue with the next sentence part. Clear? So this is one. Three of these aspects are very important to identify a segment and, sorry, a sentence and a fragment. Sentence or group of words that is a complete thought. Fragment has three criteria that will fulfill that whether this is a sentence or a fragment. Okay. So what are those? Number one, you will miss out, the subject is missing out in the so-called statement, then it is a fragment. If it is starting with ing without any second thought, the statement if it starts with ing without any second thought, it is a fragment. And if you find that the verb is missing, okay, the verb action word is missing somewhere, there is no completion of it. Okay, somewhere you feel strange. The sentence is not complete, then it's again a fragment. If the thought is not complete, just a fragment piece of, just you have, what do you say, you have edited some piece and you just left it out without elaborating on it, then it is an unfinished thought. How do we better these things? Simple, by joining the unfinished thought to the previous sentence or after the sentence. It's later part. Okay. Now, how do sentence fragments affect our understanding? Very important. I'm going a little more deeper here. So you'll first of all, if you find the relative clauses, what are relative pronouns? Anyone? What are relative pronouns? Relative pronouns. What are relative pronouns? Yes, in the chat box. Relative clauses always comes up with who, which, that, where. Okay. Why? Because these who, which, that, where actually add additional information, right? So these kind of pronouns like that, which, where, who will create longer sentences and additional information, sometimes non-relevant or unnecessary, non-essential clauses. Okay. So relative clauses are also very important. For example, here, people who have sense of entitlement and feel absolutely no sympathy for those less fortunate even when they take advantage of their services. Okay. What is missing here in this relative clause? You have mentioned about people who have sense of entitlement and feel everything is fine, but this sentence is not complete. Okay. So where is the verb form in it? The verb is missing, and you finally end up writing make me sick. So you have to look for a completions like this, especially with the relative clauses. Wherever you find who, which, that, where, be alert, look for the options that gives you the complete part, the ending part. Okay. Next, you have, if you find dependent clause sentence fragments. Okay. I'll talk about the dependent clause. So I've just mentioned about it. Whenever you find those coordinating conjunctions or subordinating conjunctions in the very beginning of the sentence, then they are called dependent clauses. Okay. They cannot stand by themselves. They create an element of confusion. You have to complete that, and it is qualified as a fragment. So for such fragments, all you have to do is remove. The best thing is like remove this because and start with my broken heart. Yes, there is one particular thing. One is you can eliminate the coordinating conjunction or the subordinate conjunction. Okay. And you can look from here, my heart, which you left hardly. And these all things are like complete sentences. That's the best way. See that if you can eliminate and it is giving a complete sentence, then that fragment becomes a complete meaningful sentence. And the third one is in gerund phrases. We already spoke about it. Gerund phrases, you have to replace the gerund with is, was, were. Why is being a gerund? The be form, third participle. Okay, the third form is be, been, being, right? So ing form. So you can replace it with is, was, and other real verbs. Am I clear? So these are the most important aspects of converting a sentence, a fragment. First thing first, recognize a fragment. How do you recognize? As I mentioned, if you feel strangeness, like subject is missing, verb is missing, you find an ing starting the sentence, then it's a fragment. So whenever you find this and that the thought is incomplete, you will always look out for options that completes them by joining the sentence with the previous one or the later part of the fragment. Am I clear? Of course, you also should look for punctuations, which we'll be talking about right away. Now, I want you all, since you understood what are sentences and what are fragments, this activity is a reinforcement for you. So let's put all your answers in the chat box. I want 1 to 14 answers, all at a time, not just one after another. Okay. If you're sending answers, all 1 to 14 answers in the chat box. You can put like 1 is S, 2 is F, like that. Okay. Need not text the entire spelling. Yes, all set. So, okay, let's see your answers from 1 to 6. Okay, all done? All the 14? We have 28 students. Okay. Wow, wow, wow. Hey, Ram, like you. That's not helping you, Ram. Put some efforts. Your message is cryptic. Okay, let's do this together. Louis Armstrong was one of the greatest jazz musicians of the 20th century. It's a complete sentence. We have a subject and we have the object. Was is your subject, it's your verb, and rest of the sentence. Good. Good, Venkat. So this is a sentence. What about the second one? He was, again, he is your subject, was is your verb, and you have rest of the sentence. So this is again a subject. So far, so good. And three, Louis Armstrong, who, what did I tell you about relative clauses, was one of the greatest. So some like this part, if you look at this, it's a fragment. We just have a subject. Okay. And it's not giving a complete thought because, we have a relative clause in between. Yes, Manohar, you can leave. So, Baki, don't leave others. Just stay back. Why should you leave, Manohar? You just got 15 more minutes. All right. So this is your fragment. Correct so far? The F looks pretty odd. Okay. Who was one of the greatest? Again, it's a fragment without any second thought. Number 5, who was one of the greatest jazz musicians of 20th century, was a vocalist. Okay. What is this actually? Now, this is completing the entire thought. We are adding an information. So when you know that it actually has to end over here, in that case, it becomes a fragment. But this is a sentence because we are giving a full information. So sentence again. Today, he is considered one of the greatest jazz musicians of the 20th century. Today, okay. I have a complete sentence. So it's a sentence. Next, he is. He is, however, considered one of the greatest jazz musicians. Okay. A complete sentence. Again, he is now considered one of the greatest jazz musicians of the 20th century. Again, a sentence. What about 9? Because, what did I tell you? Because. Yes. It's a sentence. Is it? Because of his virtuosic trumpet skills, blah, 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 is considered one of the greatest jazz musicians of, okay, that's a sentence. It's not a fragment. It's giving a complete meaning. Although he was, if it ended up like this, because of his virtuosic trumpet skills, then it's a fragment. But we find a subject followed by and then a verb. So it's a sentence. Although he was one of the most, this, it's a fragment. because the sentence starts with a dependent clause. Many people considering Louis Armstrong the greatest jazz musician of all times. It's a fragment. Because that sentence, it's just not complete. Many people considering Louis Armstrong the greatest jazz musician of all times. Then what? Right? Many of them consider him the greatest jazz musician of all times. 12 is again a sentence. Even then, here also, many of them who are there, the people. Okay. But still, it's a sentence. Many consider him the greatest jazz musician of all times. Again, a sentence. 14, many of whom, a relative clause, is a fragment. Okay. Are we done? But it comes with, yeah, but it is not non-essential, right? We are not talking about essential, non-essentials. As per the grammar is concerned, which question was that? However, right? What was the question? 7. He is, however, considered one of the greatest. Yes. But again, this is incorrect, my dear. It has to be semicolon. Okay. And comma. That's how we use however is tested. However is tested always with a semicolon, however, comma. They're called conjunctive adverbs. We have some specific adverbs of that sort. Okay. Why 11 is fragment? Many people considering Louis, considering. The ing forms. So therefore, this is a fragment. Right? Next, many, what was the next question? 12, right? Next 12 is many of them consider him, okay? Consider is a verb, and many of them, we understand this is your subject. So we have a verb. So it's a complete sentence. There you go. So be mindful with the INGs. Be mindful with the unfinished thoughts. If you find any unfinished thought, you have to add or you have to merge that unfinished thought with the previous sentence or the next followed sentence. But doing that, we have to also look for the punctuations. Okay. Now, there is no one absolute way to fix a sentence fragment. However, for a SAT purpose, we can easily spot them. All you have to look for is who, which, although, because, since, and despite. Clear? Okay. A quick recap of what all we have done with this sentence and fragments. You will find most of them with the who, which, that, were, where. And if it's a dependent clause, you can easily identify them. The sentence begins with although, while, and when. If it's a gerund phrase, you will find being, INGs. Okay. You will not find real verbs. Your job is to plug in the sentence or the option that has real verbs in it. Am I clear? So this is all with the sentences and fragments. And of course, when you read out, you will feel that there is no, something is missing out. The completion is not, there is lack of some completion aspect in it. And it really finds a bit weird. And you have to fill in if the end is giving like, and what? Something is, the climax has not reached yet. So you have to look for options that is attached with the climax part. Okay, the rest of the sentence that completes the entire fragment. Clear? So read out. If you feel the sentence is starting with because, although, and so, that becomes a fragment. And if you have a previous independent clause, what you do is you merge it with the previous statement. Clear? Look out for these in your questions. Okay, and let me start with this independent and dependent also that completes our sentence and fragments. And after understanding this, we will also learn about run-ons and comma splices. Please come little more prepared so things get easier and faster for you to catch up with the flow. Okay. Now the clauses. No, you know, you understood what is a sentence, ain't it? What is a sentence? A sentence is nothing but which has a complete meaningful thought in it. And a fragment is something that's usually a dependent clause. Okay, I can say that dependent clauses are fragments actually. Yes, we can consider it that way. Clear? Now, we have something called coordination and subordination, very important aspect, actually tested with usage of the coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. So it becomes very important for us because for proper sentence formation and editing, you should learn these things. Okay. As I was asking, what are clauses? Anyone? What are clauses? I've just explained it. Clause is a complete sentence, okay? But they come in two forms. Yes, Ram. Not complete, actually. Clauses are actually sentences, okay? But sometimes they come as fragments. In case of dependent clause, if they have everything like a subject and a verb, then it becomes a independent clause. So we have two types within this. For example, if we see this, Jennifer. So we have two types of clauses. One has an independent clause, which we are talking about it right away, is a group of words that contain at least one subject and one verb. That's the criteria. And how is it? If you read the sentence, Jennifer put a new washer in the bathroom faucet before leaving for the party. So we have one subject. Who is she? We are talking about a subject, Jennifer. And if you look at the other sentence, I figured out how to fix the garbage disposal. Absolutely clear, complete meaning. Yes, dear. Yes, ma. That's true. Very true. All sentences are clauses actually. Okay, but not clauses. All clauses are not, because we have another criteria. Dependent clause is actually called a fragment. So that's the reason why. Okay. So the second thing that you should remember is independent clauses stand on its own and they're independent. That's why it's called independent. Okay. So, and the third aspect is you can join independent clauses if you want to. This is called coordination. Okay. We can join two independent clauses, but there is some important rule over there. You can't just put two independent clauses together, then it becomes a run-on error. Okay. Now, what is an independent clause? A complete sentence. Let's say there are two ideas, right? I like apple, I eat apple. So I have to put these two sentences which are meaningful together. I can't say I eat apple, I like to eat it. Okay, I like apple, I'll eat it right away. So there is repetition of I and I if I put them together. So I need a punctuation over there. Clauses also need, independent clauses need punctuations. Now working with independent clauses, let's see how we can work with these independent clauses. You can join two independent clauses with a semicolon. Okay, let me say, for our sake of understanding, I will be calling it IC. Okay, IC, UC, we all see, Lucy. Okay, IC means independent clause. Please keep this in mind. I keep repeating this. And DC means dependent clause. So we can join this IC and IC. How do we join it? By placing a semicolon. That's the use of semicolons. Okay, the only job of semicolon is to join two independent clauses. If I don't find a semicolon, I will first of all look for a full period. Okay, two independent clauses or two meaningful sentences can be joined together in two ways. One, using a semicolon. Two, either if you're not finding a semicolon, you have to look for in the option with a period. By the way, it never happens that in SAT or other forms like ACT and all that, you never tested on semicolon and period in the same options because they're like synonymical to each other. How will they test you on that? But they will test on other aspects, which is usage of comma. Okay, that semicolon is different, right? IC, DC are connected by commas. Anish. Okay. We can never put IC, comma, IC. No. Then it becomes a comma splice. We will work on that in the next session. Right now, we are working how to join two meaningful sentences using a semicolon. But if you look at this, Jennifer put a new washer in the bathroom faucet before leaving the party. That was sentence 1. Sentence 2, idea 2. May figure out how to fix the garbage disposal. I want to put them together. How do I put it? By placing a semicolon between two independent clauses. Now, I can do in another way also, not just with the semicolons. I have another option here available. What is it? Two independent clauses with a comma and coordinating conjunctions. Now, the name looks pretty fancy. You don't need to worry about these names. They're simply called as fanboys. Here, I have highlighted them. What are fanboys? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and, so. Okay, here, and is not the one. If you don't, can remove that. They're already repeated. Okay, this one. This you are going to use to join two independent clauses along with a comma. Jennifer put new washer in the bathroom faucet before leaving to the party. Here you go. There is your comma and. The combination is always with comma and conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions. Always remember, if you want to join I see, you can use I see semicolon, I see, or I see, comma, fanboy, any of the fanboy, mostly and is the one which is commonly tested, okay? And then you have I see. Am I clear, everyone? Only two ways you can connect independent clauses without messing up with the punctuations. Ho gaya? Chalo, good. Okay. Look for the semicolons. If you don't find, look for the comma and fanboy in the options. You have these examples. Okay, two ideas joined together only using semicolons. If you don't find the period, you'll also look for comma and fanboys. That's how you join two independent clauses. Chalo, I think I'm very clear on this. Now, the second way, okay? The second way to connect or coordinate two independent clauses is semicolons. Acha. Here, we can coordinate this by using this one. It's a very unique usage of semicolon. Moreover, you will be asked on this. Be alert, okay? This is asked. This is one of the options given. If you are connecting two independent clauses, in the option, if you find semicolon, moreover, blindly mark it. Okay, Acha, but you have to also look for the coordination. Okay, it has to go with the flow. You may choose to add a conjunctive adverb. There are list of conjunctive adverbs. I will show that in the end of the discussion. So right now, understand most prominent choice, frequent choice. In the choices, you find this. Another one, semicolon, however, and comma. If you're using however in between the sentence, that means you're joining two sentences, two independent clauses, you will find this option. When however or moreover are used in between the sentence, they always come with a semicolon, moreover, comma. This is going to be there forever. It's the standard version for conjunctive adverbs. No matter you're taking SAT, IELTS, GRE, this is tested in GRE, GMAT, everywhere. Very much favorite of all the the test agencies. They will love this particular rule. Okay. Never forget, even for your GRE also, this will be there, this particular rule. Am I clear? So for adding meaning or clarifies the relationship between the two clauses. What's the relationship? Jennifer put a new washer in the bathroom faucet before leaving for the party. I get it. Then what happened? On the contrary, Mia figured out how to fix the garbage disposal. So on the contrary is always however, but I can't just plug in however just like that. I need a punctuation. And these are the two things that you have to keep in mind. Okay. Read the transition. You're using a wonderful transition over here. However, it needs a punctuation. That's another thing, Maha. That's a different discussion. That's for non-essentials. But here in case, if you find the transition word that is clarifying something, of the other part of the idea, then you have to use however, semicolon, comma. Okay, this is going to be there forever. Chalo, I have focused enough on this, and let's see how you're going to work on the next practice questions. Quick recap. Look at, if you want, take a screenshot, because maybe you'll be practicing right away. I might delay in sending the questions, but for the practice sake, coordinating independent clauses, how do they look? Rule number one or method one is you find an IC, semicolon, IC. This is the right way to patch up or bring two independent clauses together, only with a semicolon. That's rule number one or method one. Second method, or within the semicolon, you have, if you have to use transitions which are there in the options, look out for semicolon, moreover commas. Semicolon, however, comma, very frequently tested. Otherwise, these days, I find consequently the transition word used both for transitions testing as well as for sentence formation testing. So consequently has stood up almost 15 to 20 times repeated for the past tests. So I believe this time also you'll get a question either in transition testing or for your sentence joining testing. Okay. So independent clause, semicolon, consequently, comma, independent clause. This is how you use semicolons. First version, IC, semicolon, IC. But if you find option like this with a transition, look out for these. Only these are tested. Okay. Rule is very simple, ain't it? Next, method two, what did I teach you? Two independent clauses can be joined together using a coordinating conjunction. Wait a minute, just not that. We need a comma. So IC, comma, for IC. IC, comma, and all the fanboys. Okay, remember fanboys always comes with comma because they're fanboys. Okay, you can't put IC, comma, IC. That is an error which is called as comma splice. That's incorrect usage of comma. You can never ever have IC, comma, IC. Okay. You can never have, that's enough for now. This rule you remember. If I give you too much, I don't want to bombard you with too many rules. There are rules, we will talk later. This is the beginning of this entire coordination and subordination. Now, quick points to remember. Do not try to join two independent clauses with a simple comma. The one which I just said is called the comma splice. Remember, comma splice, matlab, two independent clauses connected by a comma. It becomes a comma splice. Two independent clauses without a punctuation becomes a run-ons. Okay. Furthermore, do not try to join two independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction alone. What do I mean by this? Two. So what are the things that you should avoid or not fall trap of? You will always have IC, IC, or no, this is error. You cannot do this. IC and IC. Again an error. You can't connect two independent clauses with a fanboy. Am I clear? And not even putting after fanboy, you should put a comma. Otherwise, it becomes a run-oner. This is called comma splice. And this is called a run-on sentence or error. Be mindful with these things. You're not tested exclusively on run-ons, but when you're reading the sentence, you should look out for this. And what about the dependent clause? So far, you understood the independent clause. The dependent clause, we have, yeah. Just 5 more minutes. So stay back with me. Stay focused, okay? Stay focused. So a dependent clause is nothing but that can't stand alone. Quite opposite to an independent clause. And it always needs somebody to lean on. And that somebody is like someone like me who's very supportive, very generous, very considerate, loving, caring, blah, blah, and all that. An independent clause is somebody like you who always takes extra measures, extra steps to, you know, when a girl comes as if she is asking for it to open the door, you are like, open the door as that, you know, the gatekeeper. Okay. That nice boy. You want to give a boy next door feeling to the girl, right? So Independent clause is someone like that. It is always waiting for the dependent clause. Chalo, wait, I'll help you around. Okay, you must join a dependent clause to an independent clause. Always. This is called subordination. Am I clear? So when you find a dependent clause, Babu, look for this. You find a DC. DC always starts in the beginning. If the sentence starts with DC, how do you identify DCs? It always comes with because, although, though, like, since, while, when. If you find those kind of subordinating conjunctions or coordinating conjunctions, that sentence becomes a DC. DC is nothing but your dependent clause, and basically it's a fragment. And how do I connect to how do I make it more meaningful? By looking out for IC. IC is the most generous person like you and me. So you have to connect them together, right? If you look at this sentence, because Amy left the iron on, and this is the next sentence, when the fireman arrived at the door, two DCs. How do I connect these two DCs? Sounds like a physics, right? Physics discussion. Oh, wait. What did I do? Wait. Okay. So we'll move on. So how do I connect these two? Look at this. We are going to fix this by either, what are we doing it? We are trying to remove it. We are trying to remove the so-called conjunction, okay, and make it as, if you read this, limestone is considered a sedimentary rock. Since now this becomes a dependent clause, right? It is formed out of independent particles that have cemented over time. I can correct that in this manner. Two ways. One, limestone is considered a sedimentary rock since I have removed that period and merged it with the previous sentence. We already discussed this, right? Or I can do one thing. I can separate these two sentences by removing the so-called dependent clause conjunction. Okay? We can do in two ways. One, merge it. Two, remove it. Jhanjati khatam, like, the problem solved. Remove the person who is problematic. Stay away from the problematic things or error causing things. Simple. No problem, no trouble, happy life, bindas life. Be a happy person. Now, at the same, if I had to answer this, because Amy left the iron on when the fireman arrived at the dorm, the same thing I'm going to write in a complete sentence. The dorm's absolute wiring melted and started a fire because Amy left the iron on. I can use the because part in middle of the sentence, and then this becomes a independent clause or a complete sentence. So one side we have an independent clause, the dorm's obsolete. What is the meaning of obsolete, by the way? Obsolete, this is there, word context question. What does the word obsolete means? Obsolete. Yes. You can understand from the context. The dorm's obsolete wiring melted. So something is wrong with the so-called thing. Something is circuit. Nah. Obsolete means old. CDs are old, obsolete, right? There are some obsolete technologies, some obsolete devices. Nowadays, we are using AI. Who will use all the old versions? So they become obsolete. Technology is becoming, some of the technological devices or tools are becoming obsolete, like CDs, floppy disks, they become obsolete, means completely outdated, old, ancient. So obsolete basically means outdated. So the dorm's outdated means pretty old wiring melted and started a fire because Amy left the iron on. So you can either write the first, you can give it an independent clause and you're merging it with the dependent clause. This is one way. Another way is, here's one more example. Jennifer and May had already put out the fire when the fireman arrived at the dorm. So start with IC. You have a connector, right? And you have a DC. Like this you can write. Okay? You can look out for the options that have an independent clause, a complete sentence, and a coordinating conjunction or a subordinate conjunction. And then you will write a, you will use not a coordinating, a subordinate conjunctions like because, You're giving a reason, right? Use the transition after you have written a independent clause. After the independent clause, you have a transitional word, and then you have a dependent clause. Clear? Wow, wow, wow. Right. Is it clear, everyone? Is it bouncing out of your head? Going above your head or inside your head, making you more empowered, more confident, how to use, how to work out with the sentence formations? Is it helping you? Or is it still the same? Good. Very good, Anish. I'm glad that it's working out. Now, these are some of the subordinate conjunctions. When do we use them? When do we use it? When do we require these subordinates? When we are working with IC, SU subordinate conjunction, and DC. Then we need this. Okay. When you find a sentence starting with subordinate conjunction, your job is to look for IC. You have to merge it with a previous sentence. Okay, that DC has to merge with IC. You can't just merge it just like that. You have to use the previous sentence, use the subordinate conjunction, and then merge with the DC part. Clear? Okay. Now this is how we work with dependent clauses. A simple rule. Most of the SAT will test you on these. These are the conjunctions, subordinate conjunctions often tested. So you have to keep this in mind. The sentence either starts with because, although, when, while, which, since, so that. It's a clear indication you are need to. This is a what type of sentence? What type of question is this? Testing your sentence formation, fixing errors, sentence errors type of question. All right. Now, you need not always do IC subordinate conjunction DC. There is another way to do it. Okay, variety of ways to fix this. Just because independent clause is stronger, it does not have to always go first. You can also work with DC sentence first, and then you need to put a comma. This is how it starts. The second thing, how do we work with dependent clauses? It starts with a subordinate conjunction. And the sentence follows by a comma and the DC and the IC part. Okay. So often you have, so this is your, you can also write like this. You can start the sentence with a subordinate conjunction, dependent clause, but we need a comma here. Clear? A comma is required if you have a, let's say you're merging with the next sentence. If you're merging with the part that is after the fragment, what are you going to do? You have to place the subordinate conjunction. Look out for the options that begins with the subordinate conjunction. It has a fragment followed by a comma and an independent clause. If you're merging with the previous sentence, then you have to use the subordinate conjunction between those two sentences. If you're merging with the after the fragment, you have to watch out for the comma. Clear? Or in a simple way, if you're starting with a subordinate conjunction, we need a comma in between the two ideas. If you're not merging with the later part, if you're merging with the previous part, you need, what do we need? We need then you have a DC. Clear? IC subordinate conjunction DC. If you're starting the sentence with a DC fragment, then you will have a subordinate conjunction DC fragment, comma, the IC part. Am I clear? Any confusion? Make some cheat sheets like this. Points to remember with punctuation is, if the dependent clause is first, the one which I've just mentioned, because Amy left the iron on, this is a fragment. How do we join these two sentences? With a comma in between. DC, comma, IC. Clear? Next, if we want to talk about the independent clause, you want to merge it. If you want to merge with the DC part, then you are not going to use any punctuations. See, using of punctuation is not mandatory all the time. Everywhere, every sentence doesn't need punctuation. Sometimes there is no need of punctuations. And when is the situation? When you have an independent clause followed by a subordinate conjunction with the DC, then you do not need a punctuation. Very simple, ain't it? DC, comma, IC, no punctuation, DC. Clear? Like this, you can remember. Okay, a quick recap without punctuations, especially with the subordinate dependent clauses. Method 1, which I taught you, is IC, no punctuation, and a dependent clause. Second method, a DC, comma, and independent clause. Is this clear? Two methods you have learned how to join the dependent clauses. Method 1, IC, no punctuation, dependent clause, DC, comma, IC. Clear? Okay. Before it's already 9. So let me call off. Let's take a pause over here. I'll be posting these questions. Please complete them. Right? All of this. Is it clear, everyone? Is it clear with the segment, with the fragments and sentences, independent clauses and dependent clauses, how to join them? These are the first steps to create more and more versions with punctuations. Good. Very good. Remember the ICDCs. Okay. All right. So that's all. You can log out. Thank you. We'll meet on Wednesday.